Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are actually out at Mars today, where all of our resupply vessels for Harmonia Station have actually made their transition into Mars SOI, and so now it is time to make some small adjustments. We have 4 vessels total approaching Mars. One of these, this is our Charlie resupply pod, contains food, water, and oxygen for the crew. One of these pods will give many years of endurance, so it's really, we don't have to send one of these very often, but it is pretty crucial that we actually get it on board. And this is really for the sake of the next arriving crew, many years in the future, than the crew that's currently on board, who have enough supplies to make it to their escape window to return back to Earth. This one, this Charlie pod, however, was way the hell wide, and I don't recall leaving it this wide, but maybe I set up a node to take care of it. So we're actually going to drain some of the fuel from the pod primary into the RCS system for our B-L upper stage here, which still has quite a bit of Delta V left in its tanks. We do plan on using this to aid in our capture maneuver. We do have that heat shield up front, and this one was probably actually supposed to be deployed to Venus because that heat shield has a full complement of ablative materials. We usually strip out a bunch of the ablator for vessels bound to Mars because it doesn't really need as much, or like nearly any, especially on ones with that B upper stage where they can use that HT3 to do a lot more braking and not rely on the heat shield as much. And we have 2 of these pods arriving. These are our Lima M-E resupply pods. These carry kerosene and liquid oxygen for refueling the main engine on our Chestnut craft. A little adjustment there, and then we will jump back to our Charlie pod. It is going to be the first one to make atmospheric entry. So we'll just burn through our several hundred meters per second of delta V left in the B-L upper stage, do a very prompt about face, and get our heat shield angled into the wind. Goodbye B upper stage. Lots of little pops and explosion as we get a little bit of thermal effects here across the heat shield. We've done this kind of maneuver quite a bit over the years, so it's kind of become a mundane affair. I have both altitudes dialed in for both of these resupply pods, and for a guaranteed capture, we will now that we're done with the heat shield, we'll go ahead and jettison it. It'll create a little bit of debris. We'll swing out to our ascending or descending node, I'm not entirely sure which one it is, and light up our HA-10 advanced and clear the way more meters per second than I would have liked to have seen on a inclination correction before. Well, we weren't going to make the whole burn that time, so we're just going to parse out a little bit. We're also going to put ourselves into a parking orbit so that we can deal with one, the rest of this inclination change safely, and 2, just kind of ignore this thing while we get our other 2 Lima pods captured into orbit also. And then safely tuck those away so we can go ahead and start doing our aero braking maneuvers. Now, in my infinite wisdom, I actually forgot to press record on the second Lima pod making its capture maneuver, so it went swimmingly. Maybe just consider this a duplicate, as the footage was alarmingly similar. We'll burn through what we've got about face, let the B upper stage destroy itself in the atmosphere. We'll shift some fuel forward to act as ballast to make sure that we can stay angled into the wind here. Just a little bit of thermal effects as we get down to about the 40 kilometer or so mark, and then we'll start very much slowing down into a much lower orbit than most of these things have ever done before, but most of them didn't have that B upper stage with so much fuel left in it by the time they got here. So with the braking maneuver complete, we'll deploy the solar panels and the comms, fly right past our maneuver node for adjusting our inclination, but we'll raise our periapsis into a parking orbit. Might as well get that done, and then make our burn to adjust our relative inclination before moving fuel from the heat shield back into the main portion and into the fuel tank. many aero braking passes later, because I did them very gently and at a very high atmosphere, topping or getting down as low as I'd say about 60 kilometers or so. We finally make rendezvous. I cut most of that out for time constraints, and it was kind of dizzying to look at when you speed it up so much. But our Lima pod will slowly ease its way into our docking structure and then start to offload its content of fuel onto little chestnut here. This is the second resupply pod ever to visit this station, our second kerosene and oxygen resupply pod, I should say, to visit this station. And so we already have one load of fuel already delivered. It looked like it was going to take about 3. After jettisoning its cargo, we will go ahead and separate that pod off and use a little bit of fuel to deorbit it into Mars to kind of clean up a little bit of our mess. We did create quite a mess doing all the aero captures and hoping that the B upper stages would completely destroy themselves in the atmosphere. They did not. So the real challenge was this Charlie pod, which is immensely heavy and difficult to maneuver around. But again, after many aerobraking passes and a burn to circularize its orbit with Harmonia, we are able to actually make docking and transfer over all of its supplies. That's kind of a misnomer. It was most of it. The station was not nearly as empty as I thought it would be, but it was the first chance we would have to resupply it before Chestnut departs back for Earth. And I didn't really want to short the crew. So there is still a little bit of food. I don't know why food is our excess at this point, but it is what it is. And here's our second Lima pod coming in for docking. Brakes on this thing, not nearly as good as the accelerator, and nighttime docking's not nearly as much fun, but after a little bit of trading paint, there it is. We'll transfer over the resources and move swiftly along. Now, unfortunately, all of our, I guess, deliveries for this window would not go nearly as well as those first 3 did. This is the Harmonia Cupola module, which was designed to really give the crew a few more windows to look out of and be able to enjoy the scenery and such, specifically designed to fit on what space we have available to us here at Harmonia Station. But, well, unfortunately, I'll just let old me fill you in. Ah, this makes me so mad. Oh, there are batteries. There's plenty of electric charge in this avionics core. We're just not generating enough power off of these solar panels because I used the wrong upper stage. This is the old B upper stage with the single HG3. The B-L variant has 4 hypergolic tanks and 2 solar panels on booms. There's no deaths this time, SimG. Sorry to disappoint. Yeah, and it looks like based on our positioning, we're actually going to slowly rotate away from the sun. And yeah, just we're sucking up too much electric charge. We should have just ditched this stage. It's useless without the radiators. You can see all the liquid hydrogen just very quickly boiling off. Oh, see some deaths on the 24-hour stream. It may only be my own. Oh, this makes me so sad. We waited so long for these windows to arrive at Harmonia Station, and instead we're just going to belt them into the dust. I am so incredibly sad right now. I did. Radiators work wonders for preventing boil-off. New Mars base. This will be about as successful as landing on Mars as the old Mars base. But in 1.1.3, boil-off is not considered for inactive vessels. Yeah. So as long as you ignore it, you can get any cryogenic propellant anywhere. All you have to do is ignore it. Hacks. Now this is my fault. There should this is the wrong lower stage, so I'm just going to have to eat the consequences and try to launch it again when we have more money. But we're hitting Atmo, so this will get interesting pretty quickly. Current speed 6 kilometers per second. Will it burn up or will it hit the pavement first? And boom! Yep. And there go all the parts. Alright. Hey! What? Well, that's interesting. Did this thing just like replicate itself? I can't click on anything on it, so it's not like an actual part. Or can I? Yeah, empty. The physics of it are obviously a little screwy. It's accelerating and tumbling on something that is probably not its center of mass. That's real interesting. Part in a part. Uranus orbit insertion flashbacks. She lives. 6,000 meters per second to 40, and well, okay, that's a little more interesting. So yeah, I guess they were stuck together, and yeah, how it went from 6 kilometers a second to 40 and then is now accelerating back up to 250. That's interesting. How's it going, Lucy? Not enough solar panels or batteries to make necessary correction to avoid slapping into Mars. We have yet to actually slap into Mars. We're just very quickly tumbling towards it. So we're enjoying my failures currently. Well, it did return to supersonic speeds and is now slowing back down to subsonic. Well, thank you for stopping by, Lucy. Appreciate it. We'll see you again soon. How slow... This thing is stripped out. There's nothing in it. We removed all of it to save mass. So I'm wondering how slow it will get just off of drag, but I think where you've hit the about 150 meters per second is as terminally slow as drag is going to provide for us today. Which will still certainly be a devastating impact. Yep, there's an explosion. And here comes another one. Slap. Oh, that doesn't make me real sad. You know, I'm so sorry, Pulsey. I promise not to screw it up next time. Escape Space Center. F in chat for Pulsey's Cupola module for Harmonia Station.